All right. Fuck, my back is killing me. So, tomorrow I have to still try to turn in the abuse that I've been enduring. I have to try to turn in care to care, which makes absolutely no sense. What happens when you are forced to turn in your predators to your predators? Well, first of all, lets them know that you're trying to turn them in, right? Second of all, it allows them the opportunity to cover up their BS or destroy evidence, which Miss Shelley did. It also gives them the opportunity to bully you and play victim. Now, how does this work? Well, one of them is they interrupt you over and over and over again when you're trying to turn in abuse, and they want to change the subject. Now, what they usually change the subject to is housing, and they pretend that I haven't filled out their housing paperwork repeatedly, like I haven't jumped through their hoops repeatedly. Since 2022, they have ignored every single time I've been abused. Every single one. The one time when they did call the cops, which is, I want to say about 3 weeks ago now. Now that officer showed up, and Miss Shelley had all these promises that she was going to help me through this. She was going to go to the courthouse with me. She was going to blah, 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 blah. And she would show up in court and test blah, 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 blah. A whole bunch of bullshit. Because literally the next time I saw her, she let me know that her boss, Melissa, told her she's not allowed to do her job as a mandatory reporter. That we had to focus on housing. Is that not what we've been focusing on from the start? Every single time I try to turn in abuse, frequent and ongoing abuse, including by the staff at CARE, what do they want to do? Slander the fuck out of me. Now let's go over their protocols when you try to turn them in. So you're supposed to turn them into themselves or into the local law enforcement, which I'm currently having to go to CARE to turn in CARE and local law enforcement, as well as people in the local community who are harming me over things that literally never happened, things that other people did. And then, of course, there are the things that I was forced to do to protect myself and my loved ones and to try to show the truth. So what are these protocols? Well, we already know that they're going to change the subject to housing. We also know that instead of listening, they're going to immediately get defensive and start talking over me and trying to make it my fault. Which they're also not allowed to do. Legally, anyway. That's victim blaming. Now, these people are aware that I'm not schizophrenic. They're aware that I'm not delusional. How much of the issue is people not following through, people not showing up, and when they don't, well, it doesn't harm them in the least bit. Meanwhile, I'm continuing to take the harm. And they'll set up a 30-minute appointment every week where Miss Shelley just talks over me. So, regardless of what we were supposed to do, it's going to end up being me listening to Miss Shelley, trying to answer her questions while she talks over me. That's not okay. So, they change the subject, and then they talk over me, and victim blame and victim shame and make excuses. And, of course, Melissa, according to Miss Shelley, Melissa told her that their not allowed to do any of that. They're only allowed to advocate for housing. Isn't it amazing how all of these mandatory reporters and advocates that you keep sending me to keep refusing to do their jobs as mandatory reporters and advocates and claiming it's only about housing? Well, that's kind of like saying that the Second Amendment is a hunting law. Well, in a roundabout manner, yes, it is. It's for hunting corrupt tyrants. The Second Amendment is specifically because you, as an American, under the Constitution, do have the right to empty all of that lead into a tyrant. How many of you have local tyrants? And of course, they make laws so that their victims will never be heard, and they can destroy our lives with ease. So then there's and you guys have gotten to see this one more than once on my channel with police officers as well as the people that care, where they pretend that I'm yelling at them. Now, one of their tactics is to antagonize their victim for coming forward. You all know what antagonizing is. They refuse to do their jobs. They play stupid. They will reword everything that you say to mean something that you didn't say. If you change the words, you change the meaning. And if you change the meaning, well, you're not being honest. Don't get me wrong. If you have a couple of synonyms and you accidentally use one in place of the other, well, you weren't 100% correct about your quote. Like, let's say somebody threatened to murder you and you said, oh, he threatened to kill me or she threatened to kill me. Well, they actually used the word murder and not the word kill. But other than that, y'all know what I'm getting at. You want to argue sentiments, right? Isn't that what you want to call it? So, another tactic is to take a very sharp tone with the victim for coming forward. Try to bully and intimidate them. If that doesn't work, you make false accusations, such as accusing your victim of yelling at you and threatening to call the police when they came forward. Now, how is it that I'm able to make these predictions? Well, because I've lived through it, and many other people have lived through it. These people are all friends with each other, and they protect each other when one of them breaks the law. When one of them makes a mistake and destroys an innocent life, they will all commit felonies so that that officer doesn't get in trouble. Now, Miss Shelley, by law, because of what her boss is doing, needs to do her job as a mandatory reporter and turn in her boss. Then again, Miss Shelley took part in this abuse before I spent 15 months in jail on false charges. And not just Miss Shelley. Now, Miss Shelley also told me that she destroyed a bunch of evidence. She got rid of all the mean stuff in my file and threw away the mean picture that was hung up. That's right, they hung up a picture of me in care with some mean stuff on it. Apparently, it got eventually removed and put into a drawer. Did Miss Shelley tell me what was on that paper? Other than my picture and some words? No, she was not specific about that. So what are my predictions for tomorrow? Well, I predict that I'll be threatened. I predict that I'll be talked over. I predict that I will be victim blamed. I predict that having to turn in my predators to themselves is only going to result in more predatory action by the people who work at CARE. The fact is, Melissa is going out of her way to obstruct justice because she's one of the people who committed felonies against me. Now, let's also focus on the fact that, well, ever since Hood River, I've been speaking up about the fact that they, instead of the professionals doing their jobs about the abuse, they want to shove me onto the plate of these, well, drug addicts and felons. In Hood River, they called them peer support. And all of the peer support workers there, all of them were active drug addicts. Okay? And many of them were felons. Here, same thing. Now, maybe they're recovering addicts. Maybe they're still users. But the fact is, since I first started going there, it's been the exact same thing. And when I speak out about this, it's for a reason. Is Miss Shelley going to do her job as a mandatory reporter? No. Because Melissa will fire her if she does. However, due to the repeated assaults that I have had to endure and the crimes committed against me by the police, by CARE, and by Tillamook Family Counseling Center, these are felonies. We got to get this stuff cleared up. Not doing your job as a mandatory reporter could lose you your job here in Oregon, or in nearly every other state, matter of fact. Now, when somebody comes to you, a disabled victim, well, we have to go to people like Shelley, people like Melissa, and of course there's about half a dozen people that used to work there that committed felonies as well, and I had to try to turn that into CARE as well. And what do they tell me? Oh, well, those people no longer work here. That doesn't make it okay. So what do we expect? We expect history to repeat itself. I'm being forced to go to my predators to turn them into themselves, and I'm being forced to do so alone. I tried to turn in Sheriff Scott DaCosta in Nebraska, and I was forced to try to turn him in to himself. Well, that's not okay. Here, I have to try to turn in the crooked police to their crooked police chief, Nick Troxel. I have to try to turn in the crooked sheriff's deputies to a crooked sheriff, Josh Brown. These aren't the first people that I've had to stand up to. You can hate me all you want. I'm the only one telling the goddamn truth here. So, we'll save these predictions. The only one that's kind of iffy is whether or not they'll accuse me of yelling at them or raising my voice. So I will do my best to make sure that I keep my voice as meek as possible. But the fact is, I do have to worry about them retaliating for trying to turn them in by playing victim and calling the cops. The very cops I'm supposed to turn in. You know what? It doesn't matter if you have a badge or not. Abusing people is illegal. Abusing disabled people is illegal. Abusing the elderly is illegal. Abusing children is illegal. These three groups are given, what do you call them? You're going to call them special rights in this case, right? But why would we need special rights? Are they really that special if you ignore them? We need those rights because we are so much more likely to be victimized by police, by the public, and by hospitals who can make a profit off of us. What's Shelley most likely to do tomorrow? Well, what they're all most likely to do is to blow me off. Tell me to come back on Wednesday, and on Wednesday they will blow me off until next Wednesday, and that's if Miss Shelley shows up at all. Let me explain something to you. If a 13-year-old girl comes up to you and tells you that she was raped, and you're a mandatory reporter, you have to turn it in immediately. You are required by law to turn it in immediately. The same thing applies to other types of abuse, and it also applies to the elderly and the disabled because we are the most likely to be abused. Men are actually at the top of the list. Men and the homeless are the top two categories, and the homeless are actually the very top category, considering we only account for 0.18% of the population, and yet we account for 61% of those killed by police every year. If you want to figure out per capita, well, over 99% of those killed by police every year would be homeless. So we got our predictions. The people that care are likely to play stupid. They're likely to change the subject. They're likely to push the housing thing. They're also likely to try to procrastinate and push it on to another day if they're willing to do so at all. If they don't want to do the right thing, they shouldn't have a job where it is mandatory for them to do the right thing. Miss Shelley is aware that I'm not schizophrenic by now. She's stated that many times. Many of the people in there have. Now, one of the things that they wanted to claim before is that it was because of my attitude that nobody was helping me. And in reality, well, the first half a dozen times at least that I went to care, I was very nice and very kind about the situation. But all these people wanted to do is send me everywhere else. Tell me all these other services in town are supposed to help me. And all they did is send me back and forth between each other since 2022. So our predictions for tomorrow is a bunch of women at care are going to play victim. And I mean a bunch of women because all of the men that work there no longer work there. They only work at night. So we're stuck with women and the bias that we have to deal with from women and the misrepresentation that we have to deal with women. And of course, when I try to turn them in, what are those women likely to do? Work together to bully their victim. What's pathetic is that I'm being forced to go to places that I've already been and am trying to turn in because they refuse to do their job. If I get housing, I get housing. If I don't, I don't. We need to focus on stopping the abuse. The abuse is happening because these people don't want to do their jobs. They want to cover for their coworkers so their coworkers don't get in trouble, so their friends don't get in trouble, or so that they themselves don't get punished for doing the right thing or the legal thing. There's our predictions. Let's see what happens tomorrow.